Welcome to episode number 17 of Tradecraft Security Weekly. I'm your host, Beau Bullock. This week I'm going to be talking to you about cracking password hashes efficiently, not just, throwing a word list against it and hoping for the best. So if you remember, if you saw last week's episode, then you saw that Derek and I basically showed how to dump some password hashes over a Meterpreter session using a tool called Proxy Chains and unpack it. And so in this episode, I'm going to show kind of some efficient ways to go about cracking that specific hash and talk about generally how to go about cracking passwords. So first off, let's talk about what are password hashes anyway. So whenever you have an authentication mechanism to pretty much anything, like whether it's the web, whether it's your Windows logon to your computer, what typically happens is that the clear text value that you have set as your password is basically turned into a password hash via a one-way mathematical algorithm, right? They're typically very easy to generate so that when you type your password in, it's able to generate that hash on the fly really fast and compare it to a value that was already stored. So in good scenarios, the hashes are what's stored on the back end and not like your clear text password. So whenever you type in your password to log into your desktop, it's compared to the hashed value, not the clear text. And hopefully hard to reverse. So some hashing algorithms are actually stronger than others in that they take longer time to generate. So like when it comes to password cracking, sometimes some hashes take longer than others to crack. So let's talk about some basic high-level cracking methods first, right? So your typical brute force, and most people are very much aware of, is where you're just trying every possible combination of a given set of characters, right? So let's say you had 8 characters. We're gonna try every single possible combinations of letters, numbers, and special symbols for whatever character set. Let's say it's 8 characters, right? So we'll try every single possible combination. And then you have dictionary, right? So dictionary attack is where you have a large word list that you're gonna try against the password, right? It's a list of common things. Which I'm going to show a couple of the more popular word lists that I use, at least, on the next slide. And then you've got a hybrid approach, and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, right? Because with a dictionary attack, you're just using a very static list, and if your password is not in that list, it's not going to crack it. So what hybrid approaches do is essentially take that dictionary list and mangle it or modify it in some way to add additional values. So one of the things you can do is like append characters, where you can prepend characters to each word in that list, or you can mangle the words itself to make them look differently. And then you've also got rainbow tables. I'm gonna talk about all these a little bit more in depth in a few more slides, but rainbow tables essentially are pre-computed lists of hashes, right? So like let's say you had an 8-character rainbow table, you'd have the entire 8-character space in a very easy to look up schema, so it makes cracking a little bit faster, right? Well, it makes it a lot faster if you have rainbow tables. Now, the thing with rainbow tables is they are very intensive to generate. So unless you're a nation state, you're likely not going to have like a full character spectrum of like, let's say 12 or 13 characters. And the other thing with rainbow tables that I would say is something to keep in mind too is they're usually not the best for cracking a large number of hashes. In my experience, if you got like 1 or 2 hashes, absolutely, rainbow tables are great. You can fly through like the entire 8-character space in like a couple minutes. But on like large lists of hashes, like say you had like 20,000 hashes, it's not a good idea because it will actually take a pretty long time. And I would recommend starting with some of these other approaches first. So first things first is prep some word lists. I would say go grab the CrackStation list from, I think it's crackstation.net. I'll put that link up in the show notes below. But that list actually has 1.4 billion words and has been a very good word list that I've had experience with. So what they did is they basically took like a lot of the previous breach dumps. They took like, I'm pretty sure all of Wikipedia is in there, and a number of like ebooks, and it's a very good list. Like very much covers a lot of what you will typically crack. And then you got the RockU list, which is 14 million words. Kane list, 306,000 words, and I list a few other ones here other than just CrackStation because there's definitely cases where you need a smaller list so you can start generating more appended characters in a quicker amount of time. So like if you take CrackStation, for example, and throw 2 characters on the end of it, like you append 2 characters, that might be okay. But let's say you append 3 characters. Now you're looking at, like, let's say another day's worth of cracking. I mean, this is all dependent on your hardware as well, which I'm not actually going to like mention because like the whole hardware side of it is something that is a complete separate topic. But just know that if you're going to be doing GPU cracking, you need a good rig. And so like with having these multiple word lists here, like, so let's say you wanted to generate like, I don't know, like a word that had like, let's say 5 or 6 appended characters, you might want to go with the cane list instead of the crack station list instead. Another thing that I always recommend is take the usernames of the actual hashes that you have. Like, so typically whenever you get a dump of hashes, you have like the usernames and the password hash. So take those usernames, put them in the list too, because I've seen plenty of times where the username is like part of the password. And then custom generate list by scraping websites. So one way to do this is to take like a tool from Robinwood that's called Cool, C-E-W-L, and point that at a website. It will go scrape basically like any keywords from that site and generate up a nice password list based off of the content of that site. So a lot of times you can get very targeted lists to use in your cracking. So let's talk about cracking efficiently. So when I talk about cracking efficiently, what I'm basically meaning is that go through an approach that will crack the most common things first, and then given the spectrum of time that you have to crack a given password, like let's say your engagement's only a week long, there are some more efficient ways to go about cracking that will yield you better results. So what I typically recommend is start with a straight dictionary attack. Take your crack station list. For example, I have a pretty basic cracking rig that only has 2 GPUs. They're older models, and it can get through the entire crack station list in 5 minutes on most hash types. Like, so NTLM, it'll get through in about 5 minutes. And that's, 1.4 billion words, right? So if you have like 20,000 NTLM hashes, you're going to have a lot of hits on just the straight up crack station list. And then start appending characters to the word list, right? So take your word list, append a character. Take your word list, append a couple characters. And with Hashcat, the tool Hashcat, it's very easy to add these on. You just basically do $A for any. So you can do digits or lowercase or uppercase letters as well. So so for digits would be $D. So like in the example, the 4th example there, you see the word list plus $D, D, D, D. That would be basically 4 appended numbers. So like you get a lot of years, that kind of thing. And then look at prepending too, because you can take that word list and then start prepending characters as well to each word. You're going to get a lot of hits there as well. Same thing, go through as far as you can go, given the spectrum of how long you can actually spend on whatever engagement you're on. Mangle your word list. So basically, most password cracking tools have some sort of mangling option where you can convert a word into something else. So like, for example, you would have like leet speak, right? So like a password, just the typical word password, could become something like P@55W0RD. And the mangling rules will actually automate all that. And like I usually have really good success with that as well. And then, once you're finally through like your typical dictionary hybrid attacks, then I typically would, if you have rainbow tables, I would typically recommend, running whatever. Let's say you're running let's say you're trying to crack 2 hashes or less, or 100 or less, somewhere around there. But if you're not trying to crack 20,000 passwords, then go run them through your rainbow tables. You might have some hits there, and then usually near the end, I start doing brute forcing. But I typically go with like a more like smart brute forcing approach, where you're basically brute forcing like certain character sets for each specific spot in the password, right? So most users might typically start with like an uppercase character, and then have a word, and then maybe have like a number at the end or a symbol. So you can do things like this brute force example I have here at the bottom, which basically brute force is a 10-character password with a first letter that's an uppercase. The second spot is an uppercase or a lowercase. The rest all the way to the end are lowercase, and then finally we tag on an any character at the end. So that's a symbol, number, uppercase or lowercase letter. And a lot of times you can get good hits on those as well. And then try combining different word lists too. So like take take like a very targeted list and start appending a completely separate list like Kane or something else that's smaller, and you'll get some hits there. And then finally, re-ingest all the cracked passwords you already had into a new word list, and then go through the entire process again. Because like a lot of times you'll find that users that that admins have created accounts using similar password schemes, or even like within an organization, you'll find that certain like I guess like methods of crafting passwords are pretty standard within an organization. And if you have like, let's say the company name now with like 1, 2, 3 at the end, and start running that through like mangling rules, you might get the company name with like certain characters changed out, that kind of thing. And then I always recommend get like your baselines first, right? Like so go grab the hash, like certain hashes, try to crack them, and figure out your baselines so that whenever you're timing out how long you can actually spend on cracking for an engagement, that you're not spending too long on a certain type of cracking, right? Like, so you're not, let's say you started doing the mangling rules, but it tells you it's gonna be like 10 days to get through like Crack Station. So you need to know those things ahead of time. And here's some password cracking tools. So John the Ripper is a very standard tool that it's very common to use John the Ripper. It's very good with just CPU. There's rcrack for rainbow tables. There's Pirate for pre-computing tables for WPA 2 PSKs that I like a lot. And then there's Hashcat, which we mentioned a little bit before, and that's the one I'm going to demo here in a bit. But it's extremely versatile. It supports GPU cracking. I'm pretty sure like the industry standard on what everyone's using on cracking passwords these days. So we'll do a quick Hashcat demo. All right, so I've got a curb ticket here that Derek was in the last episode. Derek dumped this from his domain, his test domain. So if you want to see that, go check out the last episode. But basically, this is a Kerberos ticket that we're going to try to crack. So one of the first things I would recommend doing is basically running just the Hashcat help, right? So /hashcat -- help. So the -- help option gives you a ton of information about the various options in Hashcat. So go look through some of these for some examples, learn about the different attack methods, and then additionally there's the hash mode. So like each hash type has a different mode that you have to set, so that Hashcat knows what you're trying to crack. So let's try to crack that password. Let me clear this. So /hashcat64. So the first thing we're going to give it is -m. So this is the mode that I was talking about. And for Kerberos tickets, we're going to use 13100. We're going to do an attack type 0 to start out. So this is just a straight up word list. This is your typical dictionary approach. So, and then I'm going to pass it my my rock-u list. And I have to actually tag on --forceland because I have an unsupported driver, and Hashcat doesn't like that. Oh, you know what? I forgot to give it the file of the curb ticket. So let's go ahead and give it curb-ticket. And now let's try cracking it. Okay, so you'll see it gets through the rock-u list pretty quick. Basically a second on my rig, which again is not the beefiest by any means. But it did not crack the password. So this is a good example because a lot of times you'll see like where like you try to crack a password using a password list and it doesn't work. So instead of just quitting there, let's start appending characters. So the -A6 option will allow you to append characters to each word in that list. And what I'm going to give it is the $A option at the end, which will basically make it append any character, so lowercase, uppercase, number, or symbol to the end of each of those words in the rock-u list. So now let's run that and see what happens. So same word list and a single character appended. We did actually get the password this time. So the password in this case was password with a capital P at SSW0RD with an exclamation point on the end. So I mean the point there is when you go through your password cracking for an organization, always go through like these various other methods besides just trying to brute force it or just trying a single dictionary approach. I love the hybrid methods as well as the mangling rules. Well, that is it for this edition of Tradecraft Security Weekly. So for the blue team, obviously make your password policies stronger. The stronger your password policies, the harder it is going to be for an attacker to crack them. Go through performing password cracking on your own network. Because like if you can go sort out any weak passwords in your environment and get rid of those ahead of time, it's going to help prevent attackers from doing it for you. And then ensure hashes are being stored using a strong hashing algorithm. Like you don't want somebody to come in and dump, like, let's say like your entire credential database and then go crack like 90% of them because you had a weak hashing algorithm. So I'll throw some additional resources in the show notes below, and you can find me on Twitter at DaftHack. Thanks so much for watching.